welcome to the live internet TV broadcast of Inner Health, Outer Beauty, where we will shatter myths about health and discuss the latest and greatest non-surgical cosmetic procedures. I am your host, Dr. Wanda Dyson, founder and director of Change for Life Wellness and Aesthetics, located on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and author of How to Be Healthy, It's Not What You Think. I've also performed non-surgical cosmetic procedures for the last 18 years. Today's guest is Dr. Russell Jaffe, who received his BS, MD, and PhD from the Boston University School of Medicine in 1972. He completed residency training in clinical chemistry at NIH in 1976. Initially, he was a skeptic of holistic medicine and thought it a hoax. While seeking to disprove the validity of alternative medicine, he was transformed into a believer, becoming a student, then researcher in traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, active meditation, homeopathy, and manipulative arts. He reinvented himself and now advocates a system that treats people, not diagnoses, cause, not consequence, and promotes long-term sustainable solutions for health. He has authored nearly 100 articles and has contributed to clinical diagnostics, including the widely used early colon cancer test. His many honors include recognition by the IBC, Oxford, England, for his lifetime contributions to clinical medicine, biochemistry, immunology, methodology, and integrative health policy. He developed the patented LRA by ELISA Act test and treatment plan in 1984, which we will discuss today. This test has enabled thousands of physicians to quickly and precisely determine the hidden causes of patients' many chronic conditions and has caused and created sustained relief, which we will be discussing. I am privileged to welcome my distinguished guest, Dr. Russell Jaffe, to Inner Health, Outer Beauty. Welcome, Dr. Jaffe, and thanks for coming.
Dr. Dyson, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
So we'll just get right to it. Today we're discussing rethinking healthy eating. We are constantly bombarded with the message that in order to be healthy, we have to eat healthy and exercise. But we're really not sure what that means. Not to single out a particular food, but we are told that certain foods like tomatoes, which have lycopene, can lower the risk of prostate cancer, and berries have antioxidants, which can also protect against cancer, heart disease, and arthritis. So naturally, we would eat lots of these foods. There are many foods that we commonly think of as healthy, but the LRA by ELISA Act test proves otherwise. In layman's terms, how does this test work?
Well, this test tests different delayed allergy hypersensitivity pathways. Now, what does that mean? We measure your white blood cell lymphocyte response. We measure your B cell lymphocyte response, but we distinguish good antibodies from harmful antibodies. Then we measure immune complexes, which are trouble. And most importantly, we measure T cell reactions, which turn out to be more important in regard to viral or parasitic or prion illness. It's about the T cells. We uniquely measure the T cells while distinguishing the helpful from harmful antibodies or type 2 reactions, the type 3 reactions, which are immune complex, and most importantly, the T cell reactions, which are type 4. So it's a little bit complex, but this tells you what to eat and what to avoid. Because as you correctly said, the food might in general be good, but for you, it might be harmful. So we measure with less than 3% variation on 4,000 or more consecutive blind split samples that were done in my laboratory over 3 years, presented at the American Society for Investigative Pathology, which is the high priest of my profession. And we had less than 3% variance. So we're very accurate and reproducible. Now, in order to use the information, you have to follow our food effects on dietary chemistry. It turns out that most of the measures of whether a food is alkaline or acid or neutral are passé and no longer scientifically valid. We developed over 25 years ago, it's been included in the Natick Nutrition Guide, a food effects on body chemistry that takes into account all aspects of the food, not just what's called the ash residue. So we recommend whole foods. You know, by shopping around the edge of the market, you might find whole foods. If it comes in a box, a can, or a package, be very suspicious. In my home...
Let me interrupt you for a moment, Dr. Jaffe. I see myself as a translator of medical jargon into people speak. So correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're doing is we're drawing the patient's blood, and then you're putting it in a dish and testing it against sometimes over 500 different foods and environmental toxins. And simply put, if the cells don't like it, they react and they look angry. If they like whatever it is, they don't react and they don't look angry. So you can determine by this test which foods the body doesn't like. And it can be foods that the person loves to eat. And that's why I use tomatoes and berries, because I've done this test on some of my patients. And one of my patients had a food sensitivity, or if that's correct to say, food sensitivity to every type of berry, every single type, every type of dairy, and every type of sugar. I had another patient who loves eating tomatoes, and she had a reaction to tomatoes. So that's why I picked on tomatoes and berries.
Well, your point is well taken. Very often, if someone loves to eat a food regularly, like they get a little irritable if they don't get that food regularly, that can be a sign of delayed allergy or harm from that food. Dr. Theron Randolph, from whom I learned a lot about environmental medicine, had a wife named Tootie who was exquisitely sensitive to corn. And he practiced in Illinois, where corn is a very important staple of the diet. His academic career ended because he became convinced that corn provoked his wife to moods and behaviors that were unhelpful. And when she recovered, because she was willing to avoid corn for about 6 months, and during that time strengthen her digestion. If you strengthen your digestion, you should be able to digest, assimilate, and eliminate whatever you eat within 12 to 18 hours. But if you want to know the average transit time, the average digestive transit time in America is between 3 and 7 days. So what you ate last Monday might come out next Monday.
Not good.
That's not good. Should be 12 to 18 hours. Not too quick, not too long. 12 to 18 hours is just right for your digestive transit time. It's almost always the Goldilocks scenario. Not too much, not too little, just right is just right.
So I find that it's not the same offenders, not the same foods in different people. It could be anything.
That's exactly the reason that we do the test.
Corn, as you said. It could be tomatoes. It could be berries.
It could be an additive. It could be a preservative. It could be a toxic
dye.
metal. It could be an environmental chemical. We can test for the largest number of foods and additives the largest number of minerals, toxic and other, to know which specific things are a burden for you, not in general, because the general advice doesn't work. It really, really, in many, many outcome studies, general advice has been proven to fail.
Right. It's not
But
a one size fit all. There's no
well,
one
no, it's
size
not.
fit all diet. And
No,
that's
no,
why
there's
I
not.
wanted to have you on here today to show people that we are very unique individuals, even among a family. We're all different, and we have different things going on in our bodies, but they're very subtle and not detected by conventional medicine.
No, conventional medicine is good for mechanistic things. It's not very good for functional information. This is in the area of functional medicine or holistic or integrative or comprehensive care that looks at the individual first and not at the symptom or diagnosis.
So I know you do testing on lots of foods and lots of environmental toxins and additives. Would you say that there are types of food that are most commonly found as offenders on the LRA by ELISA Act test, or is
Well,
just all over the place?
no, if you want to go in that direction, we have the most successful outcome study in type 1 diabetes, the most successful outcome study in type 2 diabetes, and the most successful outcome study in fibromyalgia, muscle pain. And there are some differences. There are many similarities because digestion is not good in all three groups. And when digestion gets better, the diabetes recedes. To be specific, in diabetes, your hemoglobin A1C should be less than 5%. My hemoglobin A1C for the last 6 or 7 years has absolutely been less than 5.
Now, that's very different from what the American Diabetic Association recommends. And that was a question I was going to ask you kind of later in the
glad to
program.
address that question because I have friends in the American Diabetes Association. My colleague, Ron Aline, has been working with them for 15 years to get their view of magnesium and other necessary nutrients to change. And very slowly they are changing. But we started with the ADA best standard of care in everyone in the study. Then we divided them into people that did random things and people that did what we suggested. And they lowered, in 6 months, they lowered their hemoglobin A1C by 1 full percent, which added 20 years of quality life to their survival. So I think the ADA today says they want your hemoglobin A1C less than 7. I want your hemoglobin A1C less than 5. And
So
you can get there, you can get there if you're willing to understand that you're sweet enough as you are. You don't need to add sugar or artificial sweeteners at any time to anything. And that's very clear, but you won't hear that from most medical doctors. But I am very sure that this has prolonged the quality of life of my parents, my children, and myself.
Why 5 though? Because they're saying.
Well, you see, that's a very important question. If your hemoglobin C is about 5 or a little below 5, that's ideal. There are rare but important conditions where the hemoglobin A1C is too low, where you're not putting enough sugar onto the protein to make it work. So hemoglobin A1C was introduced by Dr. Paul Gallup in 1967. We have a lot of experience with it. I knew Paul Gallup. I studied with Paul Gallup. So I've been using the hemoglobin A1C measurement for 40 years or more. If you have any concerns about hemoglobin A1C, you can measure what's called fructosamine. Fructosamine is another measure of how much sugar, how much glycosylation, or how much sugar is stuck onto the protein. So there's a little bit of nuance always. What you get from conventional care is a standard, but it's a brass standard, not a gold standard.
So we need to tell lay people what a hemoglobin A1C is and why that's important.
Well, you may have known that you can measure your blood sugar or you can measure your blood insulin and sugar. We used to pay more attention to the transient changes of blood sugar or insulin. We have learned that that's very misleading. That there is a test called hemoglobin A1C. The hemoglobin molecule is present in every red cell of your body. So you can measure the sugar stuck onto the hemoglobin as the hemoglobin A1C. Then you can see whether somebody is having too much sugar stuck onto their protein, which shortens their life and contributes to cancer, cardiovascular disease, and autoimmunity. Or if they're very unusual, they might not put enough sugar onto protein, then they need to rehabilitate their metabolism, not take in more sugar. No, no, no. I just was on a panel with the Environmental Working Group, and a brilliant professor from UCSF was on with me. And he liked what I said, which was, you're sweet enough as you are. You don't need to add sugar to anything.
So do you think a hemoglobin A1C of 5 will offer optimum health?
Well, it's one of 8. There are 8 tests of lifestyle. There are 8 tests of epigenetics, no genetic tests. 92% of your lifetime health is due to epigenetics, lifestyle, what you eat and drink, think and do. 8% is due to your parents and transgenerational influences, but that's the minority. The majority is your lifestyle. So if you eat a whole foods diet, you'll be taking in lots of fiber, lots of good bugs, lots of recycled glutamine, lots of digestive aids for your stomach to start the digestive process or keep it going in a healthy way. If you pay attention functionally to these simple principles, you can have a healthy digestion. But if you don't pay attention to supplementation and diet, to diet and supplementation, as well as activity, mental and physical, you'll be compromised. For example, hydration. Drinking 3 to 4 liters a day of water or equivalent. Have broth. Have vegetable broth. Have any broth, but not bone broth. Bone broth has too much bad and not enough good. But you might have broth. You might have water with a berry that you are immune capable of digesting and assimilating, not a reactive berry. So we get very personal about what to do because it's about the individual. We are measuring individual immune responses, not statistics. We're measuring what you react to or react against, as well as what you are able to assimilate without immune burden.
Right. So
that's what makes us distinctive.
So they couldn't really, although we do it, go willy-nilly into a health food store and just pick up all the fruits and vegetables that they might think are healthy, or all the whole grains, because even though it's quote unquote healthy, it may not be healthy for the individual. And you can determine that by the LRA, by ELISA Act test.
And we do find that the majority of people need to eliminate grains and have more grasses. They need to avoid cow dairy in all forms, but they can have a little bit of sheep or goat yogurt or cheese if they want. They should not eat meat because meat contains the grain residue of glyphosate and other harmful chemicals that get into the meat, and especially the fat of the meat. So in general, we recommend that people eat a healthy, sustainable diet. But then specifically, they should look at what they react to and be especially attentive to avoiding completely, whether it be nightshades or grains or sugars, or it could be rutabaga. That's why you need to do the test.
Exactly.
If I could tell you what you needed to avoid without the test, I would be psychic. I'm not psychic. I can't tell you without the test.
If you would like to schedule an appointment for the LRA ELISA Act test with a practitioner in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, call Dr. Dyson's office at 202-575-4660 or visit cflwellness.com. To find a practitioner in your area, call 800-553-5472 or visit client services at elisaact.com.
So there's more awareness now about the immune system in the last few years because of the coronavirus pandemic. The immune system, as we know, it defends against viruses, bacteria, fungi, and even cancer. Does it weaken the immune system and our ability to defend against infection if we are constantly eating these foods that our body is reacting to? And it doesn't necessarily agree with us, but we have no idea because it's on a very subtle level.
Well, that's why we do our test, and we have a plan which shows you all the things you can consume, the few things you must avoid, and then what targeted supplementation, what activity, what mindfulness practices will evoke your healing responses. So we want to be comprehensive, because when you are comprehensive, you get better results more quickly.
So would the immune system be weakened if we constantly eat those offending foods?
Not only will the immune system get weakened, you will have many forms of inflammation. Now, inflammation is conventionally perceived as a smoldering fire to be fought, but in fact, inflammation is repair deficit. And why is the repair deficit occurring? Because you're getting exposed to foods and chemicals that are burdening and impairing your immune response.
Correct. So there are a lot of things in our environment that we are constantly defending against as well.
Well, I actually did for the state of California the first indoor environmental quality report in 1983. This was for the Department of Consumer Affairs in the state of California. We identified 19 issues of the indoor environment that needed to be corrected. And today, most of them have been recognized as problems, but we have very few solutions.
What were some of those problems?
Oh, well, here's a few. Most of our time is spent under artificial illumination, either fluorescent or incandescent, might be LEDs today. It turns out to be important for your pineal gland, your pituitary, your master gland system, depends on knowing when is sunrise and sunset. I happen to live in a mature woods, and I turn on the lights when it's dark, but I have no artificial illumination during the day. I have plenty of sunlight that comes in. And in fact, I spend about a half an hour a day walking around our permaculture biodynamic food forest, or just walking, ambling, enjoying what nature has done today that's a little different than yesterday. These are all very doable if we're willing to make them priorities.
I agree. So the reaction that we're talking about with the LRA ELISA Act test, the cells becoming, as I quote it, or I see it, as angry or reactive, it's a chronic smoldering one. It's not what people normally think of as an allergic reaction, that your mouth swells up.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, that's exactly right.
Nothing like that.
Nothing like that. What most people believe allergy is hives, wheezes, anaphylactic shock, and what are called type 1 reactions that are histaminic, that are IgE mediated, to be a little technical, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about delayed allergy, delayed type hypersensitivity. You're talking about what impairs your immune repair system, burdens your immune repair system so that it can't repair. It's doing so much defense work that it can't get around to defending you. And oh, by the way, After your immune system repairs you, it goes on surveillance looking for cancer cells. Because it turns out almost every adult makes cancer cells every day, and our immune system should eliminate them. But it can only eliminate them if you take the burden off the immune system.
So it's like we have an army, and the army is engaged with the battle over there, so it can't take care of the battle that it needs to take care of to get rid of cancer or any other repair that we might need, because it's engaged in the defense with those things we're ingesting or coming in contact with that we shouldn't be.
There should be a balance between defense and repair so that you get defense done during the quote day and you repair at night. Most Americans are constantly under immune burden. They do not stimulate repair. They think about inflammation as some fire to be fought, when in fact it's just cumulative repair deficit. And we resolve repair deficit by putting in the healthy foods that you don't react to, along with targeted supplementation and activities that confirm the cycle of health.
So how does ingesting those foods contribute to diabetes or fibromyalgia or any of those types of diseases? Because I know that when you've done a lot of case studies, which I've had a chance to look at some of them, and of the different patients, they had different offending items, like one could be berries, one could be something else. And by removing those offending substances or foods, they were able to totally recover from diabetes or asthma or fibromyalgia. So how do those things, is it the same mechanism?
What is in common that is not understood much by the conventional medical community that focuses on the symptoms and the diagnosis. What is really going on is upstream. The cause of autoimmunity, like asthma and arthritis, like multiple sclerosis and eczema and psoriasis, the cause of autoimmunity is an imbalance between defense, that's too much defense work, and too little repair ability. And when you remove the burden on the immune system so that it doesn't have to do so much defense, it gets to want to do repair. In order for the repair to occur, you must have healthy foods and targeted supplementation. You have to move around a little bit, and you have to use whatever means you can to relax, to be mindful, to meditate, because there is going to be stress in the 21st century. And distress.
So don't they also have to sleep at night, because a lot of the repair happens during slow wave sleep while we're sleeping? So if we ignore sleep,
that's absolutely true. Restorative sleep depends upon 5-minute cycles at the end of REM sleep. The first 3 cycles are most important. Most of the time when people toss and turn and don't get a good restorative sleep, it's because of immune complexes or T-cell reactions that cause excitoneurotoxins that keep them awake. Now, they don't need to get into the chemistry, but if they want the solution, they can work with you or with us.
Correct. So when I see infomercials and they say that everyone should not eat this food or everyone should eat this food, have you found that you would universally recommend any particular food for everyone across the board, or that they not use any food?
No, what I say is buy around the edge of the market where you can find whole foods. Be very careful about going up and down the aisles. If you look at the label and it's got chemicals that you don't understand, put it back. In my home, we have almost no packaged goods, nothing in a can, nothing that comes in a box. We buy whole foods with a minimum of plastic. You should reduce the plastic. That's another subject. But we buy whole foods and we combine them in a wide variety of ways, because every 6 months I have this LRA by ELISA Act test, and it tells me the few things that I should avoid.
So you recommend that we test every 6 months?
Yes, I recommend that you test every 6 months because the day you start this restorative program, you don't have perfect digestion. It takes you months to get digestion back to what it should be. So yes, I recommend that every 6 months you repeat the LRA test because you will lose some reactions and you will gain others. Then eventually your digestion and metabolism will be so healthy that you avoid, you don't have any reactions. You're coming up no reactions on our test. I will tell you a quick example. This is a friend of mine. She was a very important person, but she was in a wheelchair and she had multiple sclerosis. And she did our program every 6 months for about 2 years. And then she sent me a card and a photograph of her rock climbing. Not that she was out of the wheelchair. She got back to rock climbing, which she loved as exercise. That's an example of what you can accomplish with our test.
And I would imagine the time it takes to recover is different for different people as well.
Oh, yes. If you do everything we recommend meticulously, it'll be a little bit quicker. But yes, tincture of time is important. Be generous with yourself and give yourself a little time to get better and better and better. I consider I'm like good wine. I'm getting better with age.
If you would like to schedule an appointment for the LRA ELISA Act test with a practitioner in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, call Dr. Dyson's office at 202-575-4660 or visit cflwellness.com. To find a practitioner in your area, call 800-553-5472 or visit client services at elisaact.com.